Hey everybody, so I've decided to title this video Performance Etiquette Part 2, Fake Through Mistakes and Always Keep Going. So this is just one part of what you should do during a performance, but basically if anything goes wrong, you just pretend everything's fine, everything's going exactly as planned, you don't have any reaction to anything bad that's happening, you miss notes, you forget a whole section of music, you play and it's way louder, way softer than you thought it would be. Anything that happens, you really should look like everything is going perfectly fine and you just keep going as if nothing's happened, and you don't break that continuity of performance if you can help it, no matter what. So I'm going to go into some of my thoughts around this, and on this channel I hope to share with you strategies, thoughts, methods, insights, etc., often of my own creation, that I hope will help you in your piano playing and hopefully other areas of your life as well. So there are many other parts to performance training. There's quite a few videos on this channel now already. I also have a video that's called How to Perform for Anyone, Anywhere, Anytime, I think. There's other similar videos in the performance training or performance playlist on my channel. So you can look there for even much more elaborate strategies about like the how-to. How do you actually get to the point where you can fake through mistakes really easily? How do you make it so that you can make a mistake and just keep going no matter what? But here I just wanted to talk about even just the general mindset of it, and in my mind it is a type of etiquette as well too, because I had a part 1 to this where I talked about how to conduct yourself when you enter and leave the stage, how to take bows and so on, and how we want to be respectful for the audience, to the audience. But here, when we have this mindset, this heart that we want to go on no matter what, to keep the music going no matter what, I also feel like this is a gesture of respect to the audience and to the music and to the composer that wrote the music, that we're not about trying to redo things so that we look better. Maybe some people are trying to redo the music so that the music comes out better, but ultimately, even if it seems like it's better to go back in time and redo that section, because we can't have that if we miss the note, right? What people don't realize much of the time is that it's way more noticeable and way more obvious, and ironically way less perfect, even for the perfectionists, to go back in time and try to redo or replay that section where you missed the note. And why? Because it already happened. Like, it's not like you actually went back in time. People heard you play a given section and you missed the note, and then you went back and played that little section, and then maybe you played the correct note, or maybe you messed up a section in some other way, you went back and played it again. You're just calling even way more attention to that section. So not only did you miss the note, you've now replayed the section again, you've caused a distortion of time, and that's just going to make it even more apparent to the audience that you've made an error. Maybe some people missed that you had missed a chord or note the first time, and now that you've gone back and played it again, a lot more people have noticed that first of all, they might realize like, oh, that section was wrong after all, because the person replayed it. And even people that wouldn't have noticed the mischord, a lot more people would notice the same exact section twice. Maybe you can still try to play that off. Sometimes it even gets much worse than that. People replay a section 3-4 times, and especially if it's under your conscious control, you just want to keep going no matter what. So I think that a lot of the time we're thinking like, oh, we can't have that if the note is missed, but we can, because it's literally already happened in reality. So there's really no going back for it. What would be best is just going on without missing a beat, without distorting time at all. So for instance, if somebody sings the Star Spangled Banner at a football game or something, and they forget some of the words, which can often happen, the best thing to do is not to start the entire Star Spangled Banner over again, but rather just to kind of mumble something and then continue onward, because the entire band or orchestra that's backing the singer isn't going to stop. So I think it's really important to have this general mindset, and this way when we hear the music as continuous, we're not stopping, we're not going back for anything, it will be more perfect anyway, even for the perfectionists. Like, the continuity is going, we won't have our attention drawn even more to the mistakes that have happened. So I'm really strict about this with my adult students. If they start to talk, if they start to explain themselves, they're already out of the performance. So this starts to get into some practical considerations, but even when you're practicing this on your own, you really want to be strict with yourself. If you start playing the piece and you mess up, there's no saying like, oh, I'm going to start this over again now. out loud to yourself, or like, oh, that one didn't really count. It does count, because this is performance practice. We're trying to do a simulation, and if you're not doing performance practice already, I would recommend it. I would recommend, without warming up, I mean, you could do some stretches and things if you like, but basically without warming up, just performing your piece from beginning to end as if you're on stage. And there really are no real do-overs here without calling an enormous amount of attention to yourself, right? So if you miss the first few chords of the piece, you miss the first few notes, and then you go back again in private, you're much more likely to do that if you're taking piano lessons in the piano lesson. You're much more likely to do that in a public performance, much more likely to do that if you play for friends and so on. So you really want to hold yourself to, you're just giving yourself one chance to perform the piece. And once you start, you want to try as best you can to minimize any kind of restarts, minimize any kind of breaks in continuity. So I think the least noticeable would be if you missed a note or chord, and then you just missed that note and you just continued onward as if nothing happened and you didn't distort the time at all. It's not always possible, but if you can do that, then that would be fantastic. That would probably, some people would probably not even realize that that's happened if you make it pretty understated. You don't have any facial reaction to it. You're not like, you don't say anything. You do not react at all to the mistake. You can react to if the music really moves you, or if the music's really delightful or dramatic in that moment, but you don't react to the fact that you made a mistake in that moment. And a little bit more noticeable than that would be if you had a little tiny restart, very minuscule, like replaying of a single note, or maybe you skipped ahead a little tiny bit. So it's a slight distortion of time, maybe because you couldn't react quickly enough, but that would not be as bad as a bigger break. So if it's even more noticeable than that, then maybe you're having to go back and replay an entire section, or you're having to skip an entire section in order to keep the performance going. That should really be if you have no other choice. And then of course, probably the worst case would be if you pretty much had a total blank and forgot absolutely everything, and then you would have to decide, like, oh, should I start this entire small section or large section again? Should I even start the entire piece again? So, and then, unfortunately you might get stuck in like a loop or something, or do I have to just end the entire piece now? Regardless of what it is that you decide to do, you have to try very hard to not have any kind of reaction to it. You still play it off as if you had meant to do that. So if you do have to restart, unfortunately, the entire piece, which is a little unfortunate, but hey, that's what happened in the moment. If you didn't have any other memory techniques or backup plans to help you in the moment, you just don't say anything. You just silently, very quickly decide, like, you're playing, you're lost, and you're thinking like, I really don't remember anything else. I don't have any backup plan. I'm just going to silently, instantly start from the beginning of the piece again. So you immediately jump there. This way the audience isn't kept anxious, thinking like, oh, is this person going to be fine? What is it that they're going to do? And then you just start playing from the beginning. Now, if you reach the point where, unfortunately, you don't have any emergency memory spots, you're not able to skip anywhere else later in the piece, you've just forgotten the entire rest of the piece, this is what you should do. Try to restart if you must, see if you can get out of it. But if you really don't remember the rest of the piece, you have to try to gracefully end it. So when I say gracefully end it, that means you probably want to slow down a little bit. Hopefully you can play a note or chord that sounds good or pleasant. Like if it's canon in D, for instance, it'd probably be a good idea to end on the note D if you're of the frame of mind where you can even think that. So if you can play something that sounds pleasant, that's great. If you can't, I would just kind of slow down and trail off, take your hands and feet off slowly, assuming you were using your feet at all, and then sit there for about 3 seconds, and then you stand up and take a bow, assuming it's a formal performance. If it's not a formal performance, I would still try to trail off gracefully in the way that I just described, and then you sit there for about 3 seconds, and then the performance is over and you can talk normally. So you still want to keep your demeanor together. Try very hard to not immediately turn either to the piano teacher or to your friends and say like, oh, that was terrible. Like, oh, that sucked so much. Like, I forgot everything. I still think it's excellent practice. In the worst case, you forget absolutely everything. You can't even go on at all, to still keep that composure. Don't say anything. Don't make a big deal out of it. You just play some things, hopefully something that sounds pleasant, but even some random things if you don't even know how to do anything pleasant in that moment. Then you just take your hands off, sit there for those 3 seconds so that we're still in the spell of the piece. If you get quieter and slower at the end, it may seem like you're doing it on purpose, and in a good way. And you sit there for those 3 seconds, keep your composure. Then it's over, and then it's up to you to decide if you want to talk about what's just happened. So usually when I'm in the piano lesson with the adult student, they may start, and then after like 3 seconds, they may say like, oh, can I start over? Or they may say like, oh, I'm going to start over. And I'm just like, okay, I mean, if they're just starting with me, I'll say like, that's okay. But then I'll talk to them afterwards and say, I don't mean to baby you. I know you know this probably, but don't say anything, because that could happen during the real performance. Or even if it doesn't, that mindset could really, really distract you. Because in a real performance, if the person's on stage and then they turn to me and I'm sitting in the audience and then they're like, can I start over? Or I'm going to start over. I would just look at them from the audience like, like I wouldn't say anything. I would just nod and be like, as in like, hurry up and start over. Like, you don't need to tell me. You don't need to ask permission. You just need to make a quick decision and start over. And I find that there's a lot of adult students and kids, I'm sure too. There were a lot of kids too from when I taught them in the past, but now that it's all adults, yes, some of them, they may get very sad in the moment when they make mistakes. They may sigh, or they may swear, which I tell them also not to do, because that's also not very good etiquette. So they may literally talk out loud. They may be like, they have like a really big facial reaction to it. Some of them will, even if they don't say things, they'll vocalize. They'll be like, or like, so you can really hear and see them have reactions to it. And I'll just keep pointing them out to them in a gentle, caring way, but I still have to make them aware of it. Nonetheless, some of them aren't even aware that they're doing it. Some of them are aware that they're doing it. Some of them, they say they do it in front of me, but not in private. Some of them do exactly the same thing in private. So anything that's happening in the piano lesson, it definitely could be amplified in a formal performance or in a performance for close family and friends. Anything that's happening totally on your own when nobody can see you, it will also come across. And in fact, it's probably going to come across even more, because we're least strict when we're alone and nobody can see us. But if I tell myself like, okay, I'm in a performance framework now, I'm in performance mode, it doesn't matter if I'm completely alone, it doesn't matter that my wife's not around, like no family, no friends are around, I'm going to hold myself strictly to that performance standard. So I'm not going to speak, I'm not going to have reactions, I'm not going to start over or have any breaking continuity if I can help it. So I would invite all of you to hold yourself strictly to that performance demeanor if you're able to. Don't say anything, don't react. Sometimes if you make like a really, really big funny mistake, you have to have a reaction that looks like you're just reacting to the music. So I might go like, like, I don't know, I might have some kind of reaction, but it doesn't look like I'm reacting to a mistake. It instead looks like I'm reacting to the character of the music or something nice or interesting that's happening in that moment there. So that's what I would suggest if it's something that's really big. Now, in case you're wondering, well, I want to go on, David, but like, how do I continue on through the mistakes without stopping? Or, what are some ideas for how I can make my performance training better and so on? I may have mentioned in this video a little bit about cold performance, about just starting your practice with performance. There's a lot more on my channel with examples of how to do cold performance. I mentioned that video, how to perform for anyone, anywhere, anytime. If you search my name and you search for that video, there's a performance playlist or performance training playlist where I go through all different sorts of performance challenges and things, like you can perform when you're sweaty or cold or in the dark or with lots of noise or with people distracting you. So there's many other ways to, there's many ways rather to go through this performance training, get to the point where you are able to play through all these different distractions and things. But it all starts with the correct mindset, this mindset of, I'm not going to react to mistakes if they happen. I'm going to fake it till I make it. I'm going to not have any breaks in continuity if I can help it. Because if you're not in that mindset, even if you watch those other videos, you still ultimately probably won't be able to help yourself from stopping. Like, you can practice in the dark, you can practice cold performances all you want, but if you're not thinking to yourself, oh, I've got to go on no matter what, even those techniques may not be enough. So if we can keep the continuity of the music, usually it's going to be much less noticeable, those mistakes. They'll be very, very, very small in the grand scheme of things. Somebody plays, they have perfect continuity, they don't have any breaks at all, and they don't have any facial reactions to any mistakes that they've made. If they miss some notes, which happens to all of us, including me, very few people will notice that. And if they have just like a few like little, mistakes or little restarts, very not too noticeable in the grand scheme of things, especially if they're not professional pianists. But as soon as you have like facial reactions to it, facial expressions, audible, like, vocalizing, whether it's talking or something else, then all of our attention is drawn to it. And if you restart a whole section or you talk to the audience, I mean, any random layperson will typically notice that. So yeah, so I hope these thoughts are helpful. Let me know what you think. Let me know, do you struggle with this? Are you somebody that swears or sighs or starts speaking out loud? I think that the final bit of advice I want to hammer home here is that you want to treat both your piano lesson, if you have one, and your practice for yourself, your performance practice for yourself, truly as if it's the real thing. So one thing that can help is recording yourself. You press record and you just treat it as if you were walking onto the stage and performing. So if you start the recording and then you speak at some point, or you restart your piece, that is what happened in real life, right? So that's more of a strict simulation. Anyway, hope you found this helpful. Let me know your thoughts. Please like, subscribe, let people know about the channel if you did find it helpful, and looking forward to the next one.